Hey everyone, this is Odin, former host of Odin Rasco's Weekly Breakdown. You are listening to KSSU. Please keep listening.
Hi
Okay.
everyone, my name is Bronte. For those of you who know, I'm the KSSU Promo and Events Coordinator, and we're here with our alumni. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Odin Rasco. I am a former volunteer and program coordinator for KSSU.
Amazing. So to start, you joined KSSU after you mentioned like being away from college for a few years. What made you decide to come back to school and jump right into college radio?
The kind of two-part answer. First is that I always wanted to finish college. It was just between weird circumstances and financial issues. It was just like string after string of bad luck effectively, and after a few years of being out of it, I just knew that I really wanted to get it out of the way. Especially I had had a very difficult year before that and thought that I needed to really refocus on what was important to me. So yeah, I applied to Sacramento State kind of in secret. I didn't tell anyone until I got my acceptance letter. um, and one of the first things that I did was like look up clubs and groups that the college had, in the hopes that they did have a radio, because I've been in love with music since I was a little kid. My dad played music, and my family's always been very much into music in all its forms. You know, taking me and my sister to concerts instead of Disneyland and things like that. So finding a chance to celebrate music and test out some other things with my station, I thought would be a really fun thing. And so I spoke to, at the time it was Aaron Wall and the station manager Gary, and yeah, did an interview, and they thought that I was worth giving a show, and the rest is history.
That's awesome that you like sought that out and you were looking to go specifically in that route. And that brings me to my next question. When you had that show, what did that mean to you? What did that look like?
So for me, it was one, sometimes just a means of processing how things were going. There's more than a few episodes where I sound like an absolute downer, which is fine because I named my show appropriately. It was called Odin Rasco's Weekly Breakdown. So a bit of a double meaning to the name, but it was for me, it was a really exciting time because one, I was really pushing myself to try and figure out how to produce this show in a way that was entertaining and unique. I would do things where I'd have themes for episodes, sometimes secret, where it was like, how do I find a series of songs that connect in an esoteric way? And so, sometimes it was obvious, like, oh, for Women's History Month, I'd have a show where it was only female musicians for my musical acts that week, or similarly to Black History Month, all Black musicians, because there's so much to celebrate from these different diverse sources. One of the things that was always important to me is that I never wanted a show where all the music was just straight white dudes, because there's enough of that. And Yeah, I also was able to collaborate with friends to do like weird stuff. Like I would have these random interstitials where like it would have a like D&D adventure that ended wrong every time. It was these short little snippets from a friend of mine, Jordan Tanaka, or my weather report by my friend Evan, which every week would avoid actually saying what the weather was going to be until the last episode. um yeah.
That's awesome. And that's really cool that you are able to craft your own like whole genre and like figure out like what you want to do for each show. I mean, that's the awesome thing about having your own show. It's like your outlet to literally, talk about anything, whatever you're feeling. If you're feeling down, if you want to talk about, current events or even like, having those theme months or even the D&D thing, I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. It let me push myself creatively too. There were a few episodes that I tried to really make them cohesive experiences, especially my final episode, before I temporarily came back. But that final episode I'm particularly proud of. Yeah.
I love that. And then that brings me to the next question. You mentioned like starting in 2020 when, everything was remote. What was it like beginning that journey without seeing the studio in person? Is that what was the experience was like?
Yeah, it was pretty weird because um I had moved, like literally I had all the plans set and I had moved to Sacramento early to be ready for school. So I lived less than a mile from campus, basically. And then my move in day was literally the day after COVID lockdowns were announced.
Oh,
So,
wow.
like, I moved just in time to be next to the school to not actually have to go to the school for a whole year, which was upsetting to say the least. But it was an interesting challenge because basically we had to, with some guidance from Gary and Aaron, but a lot of it was learning on the fly, like how do you produce a show. So for me, so much of the show producing for the first year and a half was putting it together on Audacity and making it work as a single file that we would just drag and drop basically into the schedule. And so I had to be a lot more aware of the layout of things, but also it meant that I was allowed to be a lot more meticulous. When I did things in studio, it was a little bit looser, which was nice in its own way, but I didn't have this like, oh, I couldn't fully control a fade in the way that I could when I'm, editing the whole thing at home. But it was an interesting challenge because the KSSU experience was, I sent it my show in and I would listen to the other shows and then I'd see the other DJs in Zoom maybe once a month.
Yeah, that's really tough. And like I wasn't at Sac State or even in Sacramento around like, the pandemic and all of that. But was there like a moment that you remember when you first like saw the KSSU studio, or did you see it like before? And like how did that feel like being in that space once you finally got to be there in person?
I finally got to see it um, shortly after my first semester. If I'm remembering this correctly, because it's already been far enough back, which is kind of crazy. But I think it was my second semester. I applied for and got the job of volunteer and program manager. Um, and so I basically had to go and learn the studio after I had the job of being in charge of it, which was kind of a weird vibe because, I basically had to go in and I had the advantage of because I was in office and because we were still doing almost everything remotely except for a few shows and a few classes. It was still very much still mostly just digital for students. I had a lot of time to go in the studio and just learn how things moved. I still produced my show from home most of the time, but yeah, I basically had to go in and learn how to work everything so that if anyone had a problem, I would be able to fix it. Um, and so it was like I sort of started on the back foot, which was a challenge, but it was very cool to see the studio for the first time. Decades of CDs racked up along the walls, and then the memorabilia. I mean, there's the Sparky mascot head from the original Sparky suit. We've got the posters. We've got those locker doors with all the stickers on them. It was really cool. I always loved the vibe of that place, and there were times where it was like a particularly long day of school and then working and sometimes I would just sneak into the office and like crawl under the desk like of the studio and just nap for 30 minutes. So I also like that there's ample nap space in there.
That's funny. I've never taken a nap in the studio, but but
it,
that's
it
awesome.
if it's in a pinch, it can get dark and it's relatively soundproof, so it's nice.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think what is it? We have the relaxation station. I don't know if that was a thing, but we have that too. I know they have like the napping areas, but the studio, I'll put that next on my list. Awesome. And then you mentioned you're the volunteer and program coordinator, and you talked a bit about that, but what was like in more detail, like the day in your life, like doing that role? And then for those who don't know, like what is being the volunteer and program coordinator?
Sure. So I mean, it's gone through a different series of names. Effectively, I was the station manager, as it were. So I was the one who was coordinating. And there's the reason it's in the title. But I was the one
Mhm.
that was like running the schedule, making sure that all the DJs on the weekly, lineup were producing their shows and meeting their volunteer hours that everyone is required to meet. Also doing the show, like the monthly get-togethers and things like that. Then on the back end, there was some other, paperworky sort of stuff, like making sure that we got reviews done on time when we had new music submitted, and also trying to figure out new projects to take on as a station. There was a lot of brainstorming about things that we could or maybe should do in the future, which is exciting to say that like a lot of the things that I was part of the brainstorms were finally came to life later. So I'm wearing one right now. I've got the KSSU shirt that we did for a
Hey.
fundraiser, and that was an idea of mine. Same as I was in the talks when we first wanted to get an app for the station. Um, Shoebox Sessions, I named, which I'm very proud of. And yeah, other little things like that. But one of the other things for me is I loved making KSSU a community again, because when we started we were very fractured because of COVID, and so I really wanted to make sure the station was an experience for the people involved, that the goal and the dream, and I hope that it worked out, is that KSSU was going to be some people's favorite memories from college. Um, and so I do like little things like try to do get-togethers. We once did a D&D session that I ran for DJs. One of the other things I loved is that I would do challenges where say that there's volunteer hours that need to be gotten. I was like, hey, this week only, if you want a free volunteer hour, you just have to play this song on your show. And then I would give them absolutely terrible songs to play. My favorite being Mambo Number Honk, which is Mambo number 5 done entirely in bicycle horns.
Oh
It
wow.
is a work of madness, and I highly recommend listening to it.
And that's so cool. Like when I read about like the things that you brainstormed about, how those came to life, and it's like still happening. Even that shirt that you just showed, we're gonna be like tabling, like selling those to fundraise our like studio reimagine to help get new equipment and decorations. And we still have those t-shirts that we're going to sell. And we have, all of our shoebox sessions. We have a bajillion coming up. I have my own shoebox session next week. So it's like
Congratulations.
amazing. Yeah, thank you. So it's like amazing how, things that you brainstorm were still like it lives on. And the things that, didn't seem as big of a deal at the time are a huge thing that we are working on every day. But that's amazing. And then you also mentioned that you're now working as a freelance journalist and communications professional. How have you like taken skills you've used at KSSU into that, and what does that look like today?
It's a mix. I was majoring in journalism when I went to Sac State. That's what I ultimately got my degree in. So I was always coming in with an interest in putting together stories and articles and things like that, and trying to bring accurate, unbiased truth to people. And KSSU was almost sort of the alternate to that, where it was like this was my freedom to be more creative and more expressive, because a lot of journalism, for better and worse, asks you to sort of separate yourself as a person from what you're working on. And I can go into a rant forever about the pros and cons of that, but ultimately the things I learned from KSSU is one, I think that more than anything, KSSU made me better at scheduling. I am a fundamentally go with the flow sort of uh, dis- disorganized person when it comes to schedules. Um, I try to be pretty rigorous these days though, because KSSU, I had to be, regular in the schedule and also manage all the other, up to it was like 36 other DJs that we had on a weekly rotation. So it definitely forced my mind to be a lot more proactive in making sure that like there was a set time where things would happen, which was incredibly helpful when it comes to like scheduling, 10 interviews in a week or something.
Absolutely. And I feel like a lot of college students don't utilize their calendar until they have a job where they need to utilize their calendar.
Yeah.
So that's
I
so
have,
that's a very good skill.
keep a day planner with me at all times.
hmm Amazing. And then you recently started an MFA, if I'm correct, in creative writing.
Yeah.
What inspired that next step and kind of tell us about that?
Oh gosh, it's kind of a weird one. So I originally started school, or college, planning on going in for a creative writing degree. That had always been the goal and the interest because I've always loved books, and I've always enjoyed writing, though I'm inconsistent in actually writing things. And then with 2020 and uh, I don't know. There was a moment where it was just year after year of like, oh, this has not gotten better. And then there's like all these things about like fake news and like, the government actively sort of pushing against any reporting that was uh, you know, favorable. Was turning into this issue where I saw a strong, necessary need where it's like, if I want to do something that might possibly be helpful for the state of the world, if I can use my writing to bring truth to anyone and something accurate and also ethically mindful. There's a lot of, not a lot, but I've met people who are so interested in getting the story, uh despite what it impacts on the people the story might be about, that um it was always very important to me to remember that there's a human element to every story. And so yeah, the long story short, I switched to journalism because I thought it was very important. But after years of doing that for a local paper and then pivoting to freelance, I thought that it was important to remember that the thing that is most interesting to me is writing, like the act of doing it. And so I thought if I was going to go back to school, doing a master's in journalism would be doing a lot of the same stuff that I was already doing, albeit at a higher level. I'm not going to pretend that like I'm as good as master's journalism students. I'm not. But the thing that's always been important to me is like there might be better reporters, but when it comes to people who write like me, there are not many who write like that. So I wanted to make myself a better writer, and it's been interesting and challenging. I'm working on a novel, and there are times where I want to scream very, very loudly in frustration, but I am keeping with it. And it's been a very encouraging experience so far.
That's amazing that you're starting a novel, and I know it's like not a small feat. Like that takes a lot of time and effort. But yeah, let us know when you publish it so we can give you a shout out.
Of course.
But that's amazing. And I feel like a lot of our KSSU alumni feel a pull towards storytelling, and that, that's kind of like what all the DJs are more on the creative side of things, or they want to connect with people, which is why we all do radio. So that's amazing. And then for advice, what would you give um, to students who might feel unsure about joining like college radio or joining that kind of journalism sort of thing that you're doing?
Well, journalism, the advice I'd give is, if there's anything you'd rather do, do that.
Hmm.
Like journalism, it's something that my someone I know, Emily, once told me was, people who keep doing journalism do it because it's the only thing that they can do, and I think that's perfectly fair. It's there's so many reasons to not do it, just because one, the market is just constantly feels like it's falling apart. There's papers that get gobbled up by private equity, and then there's mass layoffs. Even bigger papers like the Washington Post did one recently. So it's a tough biz, especially if, like me, you're interested in doing basically just print. Which I decided to make like do journalism on hard mode because there's not many print publications anymore. But that being said, if you feel a pull towards it, journalism is incredible in that it gives you the opportunity to do something new every day. There's a lot of days where, sure, you're just, at your desk typing and you make a phone call, you do the interview, and then you do another story. But there's also so many opportunities for weird and wonderful and unique experiences. And also, you get to be that guy who knows a guy. Like, after years of doing journalism in a market, you're eventually going to like know someone who knows something about basically anything you could be wondering about. And that's always really fun. But when it comes to KSSU, the advice I give is that, for a long time, it's like, if you love music and you want to share it to KSSU, but you don't need to even love music. Crazy to me as that might be. But if you have a voice that you want to share, or if you want to find a way of connecting to people, um, having a show was my favorite part of the time that I spent at Sac State. And apologies to the State Hornet crew. But State Hornet was in a nice second place while I was newsletter editor there. But um, KSSU was an incredible program where I got to meet wonderful people that I stay in touch with to this day. I talk to some of these people, every couple weeks. There's one who we exchange memes like daily. And you meet wonderful people. You get to learn about new music and new stuff, and an hour every week you get to devote to honing your voice and learning something new and gaining practice at a skill that, I mean, one, yeah, audio editing or live audio production, there's always room for that in the world. Someone's going to need it, and that's rad by itself. But it's the opportunity to explore your voice and push boundaries for what you think that you can do. And all the while you get to force people to listen to the music you like or to your opinions. Like one of my the person who followed up, Lawrence Charles, he had a show where every week he would talk about anime, and like in a roundtable discussion sort of thing. And that was rad. Like that's one of the things about KSSU that I think is incredible is every show is unique. And the tagline "Be Yourself" I think is super important, because KSSU doesn't just let you be who you are; it lets you sort of try and discover what more there is to you and share that with the world.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to have that community, especially in college. And then the thing you said about journalism, like, if you love it, go into it. Definitely not for the money. I would say that for like everything related to what we do, like radio. If you love it, go for it. It's not, the Fortune 500 sort of,
Yeah, you're never going to make a
salary.
billion dollars doing this,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you get to stay entertained.
Yeah. And the same goes for, the music industry, unless you're like the top 1%. But for sure, I love I love that it's realistic and it's the truth. Awesome. Well, do you have anything else to add? Otherwise, I don't have any more questions.
No, I'd be remiss if I didn't give shout outs to, you know, first of all, anyone who had a show while I was at KSSU. There were so many incredible, wonderful people: Ali Soto, Brian Tao, DJ Baby Kangaroo, Rad, um, William Graves Hafford, who had my favorite show name because he called it Dead Air, which is a perfect name. And big shout out to Aaron and Gary who brought me on in the first place. And of course, and he's now in a different position of leadership there, but my partner in crime, Hector, was a phenomenal dude, and I'm so glad that he's still there, carrying the torch for KSSU. He's a wonderful person, and everyone's lucky to know him. But yeah, I'm just always thrilled to see that KSSU is still going and thriving and developing. We did the 30th anniversary while I was there. And I made the joke on stage of it was 30 years of mismanagement, and I'm glad to see that we've made it to 35.
I love that. I love that you and like everyone who you worked with and everyone at the time have built a legacy, and we hope to keep carrying that.
That's
Um
incredible.
cool.
Thank you so much. It was great
Yeah.
talking to you.